Well, I grew up in Burien, Washington. We all moved there in the early 60s. And at the time that we were living there, when we moved there, it was still predominantly white. And we were one of the very first Black families to move into the neighborhood. So in my elementary school, I was the only Black child in that school. On the corner that we lived, there was a lot of car accidents that were happening. And it was because it was a two-way stop. And for some reason, the way that the stop sign was positioned, people weren't seeing it all the time. So there would be these car wrecks at this corner all the time. And my father, being civic-minded as he was, he would run out and start directing traffic. So then he decided that there needed to be something done about that. And he went around to the neighbors to see if we could get a street light put there. And he wanted to get some signatures and things like that. And so a lot of the people wouldn't let my father in, it was, they just, they had a lot of animosity, I guess, and a lot of questions about us. But there was one man that did let my father in, and he is the one that told my father that there had been this petition. The neighbors had put together a petition to get us out of the neighborhood. So after my father was successful in getting this street light put up, you can still see it. So on the corner of 8th and 136th, my father had that street light put there. There was an article that came out in the newspaper. When the Woods family first moved in, we didn't, there was a lot of questions, but now we're seeing that they're good people and good neighbors. We got called, harassed, and we got called names all the time, me and my sisters. So there was all these kind of things that happened. And this was happening at a time when there was also a lot of racial turmoil going on in the country. So you could turn on the nightly news and you would see people trying to integrate the lunch counters and being, beaten up and harassed and so forth. So while, you're watching this play out nationally, you're having your own experience in your own little neighborhood of this racial strife. And so it influenced me a lot growing up. So at a very young age, I became very aware of the things that were going on around me and the things that were happening to me personally. And so I think that those things have a great deal to do with the kinds of things that I like to write about and where part of that influence comes from. My parents always taught us that just because something's in a book or just because somebody in an authority position says something is so, that doesn't make it true, and that you have to always question things. So that was one of my main schoolings growing up, was this idea that you could always challenge authority. My father was, you could look at him and you could see a person that you would think of as being conservative, because he would wear three-piece suits. And he was a Boeing engineer, and you would see this conservative person, but really he wasn't that conservative when it came to his politics. And he just believed in people standing up, and he loved all of the Black Panthers and people like H. Rap Brown. He really admired those people for the way that they came forward and were non-compromising in their stances. The thing that I really learned from my mom, because my dad was something of a chauvinist. He didn't want my mom to work, and he didn't want her to necessarily have her own money and all those kinds of things. So my mom stood up against that, and she, went out and got a job and had her own bank account and had her own transportation and those kinds of things. So, and she taught me also to make sure you have your own things. Make sure you're an independent person. My first formal experience in theater was when I was 19 years old. I was in my first play called The Latchkey Children. It was written and directed by this woman named Pierce Davis. It was at the Langston Hughes Cultural Arts Center. And I joined Black Arts West Theater, which was a legendary Black theater company here in the 60s and 70s. They did great work, a lot of classic plays. And I joined a little late in the game. It was the 70s. And I did a lot of work with them, some really great roles. The first play that I wrote was called Waiting for Billie Holiday. It was a one-person play. I had wanted to do a one-person play for a while. I'd seen some great ones. I'd seen Anna Devere Smith, and I'd seen Roger Guinevere Smith. And I just knew that if you can do a wonderful one-person play, it's just astounding to watch. And I lived in this loft that faced the alley. And my sister Renee came to visit me. She's very city-oriented. She loves the city. She romanticizes everything about the city. And so she looks out my window and she sees these garbage cans. And she's just like, ooh, garbage cans. It's just like New York. I feel like it's just like Billie Holiday singing. So I started just sort of imagining Billie Holiday as a spirit that comes to the alley and sings to us and soothes us. And so that's how that play started, as this character of Billie Holiday. And then it had several other characters in it. And I did it for 2 evenings, and just to see, if I could do it and what the reaction might be. And after I'd done that, I really realized that that was an art form that I really liked a lot, and I wanted to keep doing it. It's very challenging, and I liked the challenge of it. Being an actor has definitely influenced my writing, and in fact, it's probably the reason why I do write. It's the motivation for it, because I wanted to write some roles for myself. I wanted to write roles for other people that were good roles. I was really tired of being stuck in a box of stereotypical roles of, you can only play, these few things. You can only be a prostitute, or you can only be a criminal. And that wasn't what I knew of my life or the people in my life. I knew well-rounded, multifaceted human beings. And those were the ones that I wanted to bring forth. And I figured that the only way that I was going to be able to do that was if I wrote them. When I was doing the one-woman shows, being able to give myself lines that I want to say, that I think are either raw or it's a certain kind of heightened language, but what comes out of your mouth as an actor, to me, is very important. And I wanted to create that for myself and for other people. And so yes, it's very motivated from my work as an actor. I don't ever start writing something trying to achieve an effect. I don't ever say, I want people to be touched by this, and I want people to cry at the end, or I want people to laugh at this part. Because then I would be trying to create an effect rather than going through a process. So for me, it's very process-oriented. And I think that if the work is universal and it speaks to many different people, I think that's simply because as humans, we are having a human experience that is common to all of us. The specifics of it can be very different. The details can be very different. The levels to which things are perpetrated on us and we react to it can be very different. Everyone has experienced loss. We all know what grief is. We all know what love is. We all experience embarrassment and vulnerability. So if you have a character, it doesn't matter what the character's exterior is. They could be living on Mars. If they are experiencing the same emotional landscape as you are, then you're going to put yourself, I believe, you're going to put yourself in that character's shoes regardless. So I think that that's why it might feel universal. It's just because of the larger landscape of who we are and what we experience as a human race.